I'm Edie Lush, really pleased to be joined now by Alzbeta Klein. She's the Director and Global Head of Climate Business for IFC. Welcome to Transition Forum. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So IFC has been an impact investor since, in fact, before there was even really a word for it. And I know you care very deeply about investing in sustainable finance, and in particular in climate business. So tell me why that is.
That's a great question. Impact has been around for a long time before we had a name for it, and we've been one of the original investors. And about 15 years ago, we decided to start looking at what climate business would look like. Again, way before it was fashionable and way before we had a lot of words for it. We've been an impact and climate business investor for a while. And why are we focusing on this part of the market? Because it is a good business. It's a good business for us, and it's a good business for the partners who come in to join us in climate business work.
Give me a statistic that might surprise you in terms of investment through climate business.
So a lot of people who first look into climate say, well, it's advocacy. It's about going to protests. It's about doing all kinds of things. And we tell them, yeah, that's part of it, obviously. But mainly, it's a good business opportunity. And why is that? Back in 2015, most of the countries of the world committed as part of the Paris Agreement to do certain things to their economies. They're called nationally determined contributions. They agreed to increase the share of renewable energy. They agreed to build smarter cities. They agreed to do more green finance. And we in IFC mapped out this investment opportunity in 2016, and we came up with a number of $23 trillion. I hope it surprises you, because it surprised many of us, and that's just for the top 20 emerging markets. That's a lot of money. And if you sort of see, okay, has IFC been right? Have they figured it out properly? Actually, the answer is pretty close, because renewable energy market today is about $1 trillion a year. And that's a lot of money going to renewable energy year in and year out. So this investment opportunity is materializing. And if you ask me, is it just these multilateral development organizations, or is it a real commercial opportunity? The answer is that if you sum up all of us who work in development finance, we probably put out $5, $6, $7 billion a year into renewables, but the market is $1 trillion. So somebody else, commercial finance, investors, asset owners, pension funds are coming in to do that. So it is a good business.
Fascinating. So what impact do you think COVID-19 might have on sustainable investment in emerging economies?
That's a great question, Edie. And we have to think it through, because there was a lot of sort of panic and urgency, especially sort of first few weeks into it. A lot of companies are facing stress. A lot of companies are facing immediate liquidity needs. And the question was, will climate survive? Will ESG investment, environmental social governance investment, survive? And the answer is yes, because many of us who are working in a field believe that if the COVID is a crisis that we have in front of us. Climate is a crisis that we know about. We actually know what's happening. We know what will happen because the scientists are telling us. And we had a good set of conversations over the past few weeks about the black swan events, which are the events that you don't expect, and about the green swan events, which is the event that you know will happen, you just don't know when. Well, climate is the green swan event. We know things are happening, and we need to focus on it. So it's about this question of going from urgent to important. That is the distinction between COVID and climate, even though they share the first letter of the alphabet.
So
the C.
How does IFC partner with banks and other sources of private capital to do this investing in climate business?
So we have found that partners are increasingly interested in joining us in this journey. And again, why? Because it's a good business opportunity. And so the way how we work together is that when we do, say, a large solar project, for example, Benban in Egypt, which is one of the largest solar installations in the world, it's about a couple $2 billion to actually put it in place. We obviously don't fund it all by ourselves, and we bring in partners as a syndicate of banks, as a syndicate of investors who are going to come in either under our umbrella or separately as a parallel lenders, parallel financiers. And that's how we put it together. And so year in, year out, we as IFC invest about a third of our book into climate. So a third of everything we invest in every year is in climate. But increasingly, what has been growing, not only our share, but also what others are willing to join us for. So obviously, solar energy has not been the topic 10, 15 years ago, but now most of the transactions that we do in solar and in wind have co-investors, partners from outside. Green buildings. Increasingly, commercial real estate developers are looking at green buildings as an opportunity, and then they come with us to invest in those buildings. And similar in green finance, green bonds, that has seen a fantastic market growth, as you know.
So let's talk about the green bond market, because this is exciting. Tell me where we are and where you think it needs to be in the next few years.
Green bond market has been growing tremendously, and it's probably one of the fastest growing asset class in the bond market. But it's still small. It's about 1% of the total bond market. Is it enough? No. Is it growing fast? Yes. Now, how has the market developed? It's actually a really good market development story, so I'll share that with you. So when it started about a decade ago, it was multilateral development banks that started it. So EIB, European Investment Bank, issued the first one. World Bank issued second one. IFC, my organization, issued the third one. So we consider ourselves the parents of the market. And it was a very small issuance, very niche product in a bond market. And then a few years later, we issued the first benchmark bond, over $1 billion green bond. So that's a sizable market offering where you can get a lot of investors coming in. And so we have done that for a few years. And then we started thinking, all right, we know how to do it on our own balance sheet and then match our green projects to those proceeds of those bonds. But we have about 700 banks in our portfolio, banks in emerging markets in which we are invested or with whom we work. And they increasingly started to be interested in the market. So we said, okay, let's help some of the key banks in emerging markets to do the same. So we went to Colombia and we worked with Bancolombia and Banco da Vivienda, and we helped them issue their first green bond. And then we went to a couple of banks in Turkey and we helped them issue the first green bond, where we were the key investor, the core investor. And after doing that for about 5 years, we thought, okay, this is good. So we have supply side of the market. There's enough green bonds coming in, but you need to match it with the money, with investors, right? So we created a new product a couple of years ago. We created a fund, which we teamed up with Amundi, and it's called Emerging Green One, which is the largest green bond fund for emerging markets. And we have done a second one, Regio, with HSBC. Just recently, we had a third closing of the fund. One is for banks and one is for real sector companies. So those funds bring both sides of the market, supply of bonds, and demand for bonds, or supply of funding, demand for funding at the other side of it, right? So we are basically creating both sides of the market, supply and demand, and through that, you grow the product. So that's where we are. And I think we still have a lot of room to grow.
Do you have any predictions on how fast we'll see it grow, when we could see it reach 5% of the global bond market, for example?
That's going to be tough because of COVID, Edie. So what we are seeing in the market today is it's been a slow 6 months for obvious reasons. But what we are seeing is a growth of social bonds. So my organization issued a couple of social bonds, COVID bonds, and there are several other institutional investors who are issuing social bonds rather than green bonds. I think green bond market will come back, and as soon as we go from urgent to urgent and important.
Right.
But right now we're seeing a bit of a slowdown, and it'll probably take us a couple of years to restart that. But the market is there, and when we talk to our clients and investors, there is a huge demand for the product in the market.
Alzbeta, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Transition Forum, and I'm Edie Lush.